Since taking office, former President Donald Trump's administration implemented a range of tariffs and trade policies aimed at reshaping global trade relations and addressing perceived trade imbalances. These moves had significant effects on various countries, as they either faced direct tariffs on their exports to the United States or were caught in retaliatory measures from other nations. Trump's tariffs, particularly those on steel, aluminum, and China, created ripple effects throughout the global economy. This video highlights the top 10 trade partners most affected by Trump's new tariff rules, focusing on the immediate consequences and long-term impacts on global trade. 1. China. China was one of the most affected countries by Trump's tariff policies. As the U.S. imposed tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of Chinese goods, the trade war escalated between the two largest economies in the world. Trump's administration accused China of unfair trade practices, intellectual property theft, and currency manipulation. In response, China retaliated with tariffs on U.S. goods, particularly agricultural products, and the trade dispute disrupted the global supply chain. The tariffs led to higher prices for consumers and businesses, affecting everything from electronics to raw materials. 2. European Union. The European Union, EU, faced significant challenges due to Trump's tariff rules, particularly the tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. In 2018, the U.S. imposed a 25% tariff on steel and a 10% tariff on aluminum, impacting EU producers. In retaliation, the EU targeted U.S. products such as bourbon, motorcycles, and jeans with its own tariffs. This tit-for-tat tariff exchange strained U.S.-EU relations and led to disruptions in industries reliant on European exports. Additionally, Trump's threats to impose tariffs on EU auto imports added another layer of uncertainty to the transatlantic trade relationship. 3. Canada. Canada, the United States' closest trade partner, was also significantly impacted by Trump's tariffs, particularly the steel and aluminum tariffs. As a major exporter of these metals to the U.S., Canada saw its industries directly affected by the 25% and 10% levies. In retaliation, Canada imposed tariffs on a wide range of U.S. goods, including steel, aluminum, and agricultural products. Despite the strong trade ties between the two nations, these tariffs disrupted key industries and highlighted the vulnerability of even close allies in the face of protectionist policies. 4. Mexico. Mexico, another major U.S. trading partner, experienced the fallout from Trump's tariff rules, especially in relation to the steel and automotive industries. Mexico's exports to the U.S. were directly impacted by the new tariffs, which raised production costs and reduced competitiveness. In response, Mexico imposed tariffs on U.S. goods such as pork, apples, and cheese. The trade tension between the U.S. and Mexico also led to renegotiations of the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, resulting in the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA, which aimed to address some of the issues but also introduced new challenges for businesses in both countries. 5. Japan. Japan, a major exporter of automotive and electronic goods to the U.S., was affected by Trump's tariff policies, particularly the threat of auto tariffs. Trump's administration considered imposing a 25% tariff on foreign-made vehicles, which would have had a significant impact on Japanese automakers like Toyota and Honda. While the tariffs were never fully implemented, the uncertainty surrounding trade relations between the U.S. and Japan led to concerns among Japanese businesses about the long-term stability of their exports to the U.S. The situation underscored the vulnerability of global supply chains in the face of protectionist measures. 6. South Korea. South Korea was another important trade partner that felt the effects of Trump's tariff rules, especially in the steel sector. South Korea is one of the largest suppliers of steel to the U.S., and the imposition of tariffs on steel products severely impacted its exports. In addition to steel, the automotive industry in South Korea was also affected by the threat of higher tariffs on vehicles. The country's trade relations with the U.S. were further complicated by Trump's demand for a revised trade agreement, resulting in the renegotiation of the U.S.-South Korea Free Trade Agreement, Chorus FTA. 7. India. India's trade relationship with the U.S. was impacted by Trump's tariff policies, especially concerning tariffs on aluminum, steel, and certain agricultural products. While India did not face tariffs as severe as those imposed on China, the rising costs of exporting key goods to the U.S. put pressure on Indian businesses. Trump also threatened to end India's preferential trade status under the Generalized System of Preferences, GSP, which provided duty-free access for certain goods. This action was seen as an attempt to address the trade deficit with India, but it also raised concerns about the future of U.S.-India trade relations. 8. Brazil. Brazil, as a major exporter of agricultural products and steel, was directly affected by Trump's tariff policies. The steel tariffs imposed by the U.S. created challenges for Brazilian steel producers, who relied on the U.S. market as a key destination for their exports. Additionally, Trump's policies regarding ethanol and other agricultural imports had a direct impact on Brazil's farming sector. While Brazil sought to capitalize on the trade tensions between the U.S. and China by increasing exports to China, the overall impact of Trump's tariffs led to a more complicated trade environment for Brazilian businesses. 9. Vietnam. Vietnam, an emerging manufacturing hub, faced increased scrutiny as a result of Trump's tariff rules, particularly regarding the U.S.-China trade war. As companies sought alternatives to Chinese manufacturing due to tariffs, many turned to Vietnam for production. However, this shift led to a rise in Vietnam's exports to the U.S., which in turn raised concerns that the country might face increased tariffs as a result of its growing trade surplus with the U.S. Trump's administration also accused Vietnam of currency manipulation, further straining trade relations between the two countries. 10. Australia. Australia, a key ally of the U.S., was not exempt from Trump's trade policies, though the impact was less severe compared to other nations. The country's exports of steel and aluminum faced tariffs, which resulted in higher costs for Australian producers. Additionally, trade tensions between the US and China had indirect effects on Australia, particularly in the mining and agricultural sectors, as China is a major trading partner for Australia. Despite these challenges, Australia benefited from its strong economic ties with the US, and efforts were made to maintain a stable trade relationship. Trump's new tariff rules had far-reaching consequences for global trade partners, creating both challenges and opportunities for countries involved in U.S. trade. While some nations, like China and the EU, faced direct and severe impacts due to high tariffs, others, like Vietnam and Brazil, had to navigate the complexities of shifting trade dynamics and new market realities. Although tariffs were meant to protect domestic industries and reduce trade imbalances, they also disrupted established global supply chains and altered the competitive landscape. As these tariff rules continue to shape trade relationships, understanding the implications for these top 10 trade partners is essential for businesses and policymakers alike.